Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the Republican Party of Texas, how are you today? As you look around, you'll see key members of your party, Newt Gingrich, George W. Bush Jr., Rick Perry. I'm here to ask you guys today a question about your beliefs. Now, how many of you here, first sounding the words, believe that critical thinking is important in America, for Americans? Okay, I figured. A lot of hands. Which is why it's interesting to note that at your last party convention, you guys elected to vote in this policy of, and I quote from Washington Times, we oppose the teaching of higher order of thinking skills, critical thinking skills, and similar programs which focus on behavior modification and have the purpose of challenging a student's fixed beliefs and undermining parental authority. Chew on that for a little bit. Now, the real question is on Americans' mind, I think, is this for the bettering of your students' education, or are you afraid that they're too educated? And as Colbert puts it, in a pretty good sarcastic quote, amen, brother, we have for a long time blindly accepted the ideas of not blindly accepting ideas. As Huffington Post also states, the document states that corporal punishment is effective and recommends teachers be given more authority to deal with disciplinary problems, despite countless articles with the American Psychological Association showing the antisocial behaviors that come from that, from being hit by your teacher in the classroom. But at the same time, you know, you're a teacher in a class, you've had a long day, the kids won't shut up, you want to smack them around a little bit, get it back in line, grand. What I'm here to say is that critical thinking has a purpose. In a PR Week article about critical thinking and employment, critical thinking can help individuals see underlying connections among disparate ideas or facts, assess information logically, and resolve complex issues, which is something that I think all of us can agree that our politicians, whether they're from Texas or anywhere else, should be able to do, as well as the students that come from those states. But I think what's important for your guys' party and what it's important to focus on is what is important to Americans today. And it seems that many states have taken a strong approach in the educational reform area. And for instance, a quote from educationnext.org, there is some hint that those parts of the U.S. that took school reform the most seriously, Florida and North Carolina, for example, have shown stronger rates of improvement, while states that have resisted many school reforms, like Texas, Iowa, and Wisconsin, are among nation's test score laggards. And this isn't something that you want your state to be known for. I think that's grand. The best case scenario, though, and not to be so negative, best case scenario for you guys, I think, is, you know, come 2016, during the next election, that your guys' education rates are up, as well as confidence in your state in general are up, rather than, you know, the negative media such as Colbert Report and everybody having their way with the types of policies that you guys are putting into effect. In other words, you won't get there by shooting yourselves in the foot. I mean, opposed to critical thinking, that's the sort of thing that's just going to basically make it harder to get future elections, you know, or have successful future elections, and it's just going to get the federal government more involved in your state, which is something I know you guys love. Long story short, if you want a shot at the White House in 2016, you got to appeal to what's big in the hearts of the American public today. And I know that we've had a large young voter turnout, probably the largest in a long time, which is probably kind of annoying, but at the same time, you know, if you go with that boat and go with the flow, focus on educational reform in the right way, I think that you guys could probably make it in 2016. Thank you.
All right.
So what is it about the political right-wing of the Lone Star State? It seems like they are now competing with Arizona to take the lead as the nation's most anti-education and anti-intellectual state. For real though, these are the same people who are trying to secede from the U.S. because they weren't satisfied with the outcome of the election. They're so pissed off Barack Obama's been reelected, so they don't want to live under him for another 4 years, so they want to form their own country. Little do they know that's not going to happen. It shows how little they do know. So they say everything's big in Texas, but obviously not the brains. Because anyhow, piggybacking on what Jake said, higher order thinking. Texas GOP has banned higher order thinking skills, critical thinking, anything else that falls to that category. Because why? They're scared of their fellow Texans rebelling to their so-called standards. According to the Texas GOP, critical thinking will challenge the students' fixed beliefs and undermine parental authority. Donald Hero, the writer for Skeptics, states that, in a nutshell, the classic dogma of fundamentalist churches and authoritarian states: don't think for yourself, don't ask questions, don't rock the boat because the church The GOP and your parents are the ultimate repository of truth, and we don't want the lies we told you as children to be undermined by anything like education. So basically what they're trying to tell you is to think one way and that's it. Might as well just put them in independent study. Anyway, Texas says otherwise, but critical thinking has many benefits and should not be banned from public schools. Critical thinking is being used by Surrey Community College to help students to learn to think more clearly, to question the world around them, and become better students, individuals, and members of society. Lisa May, director of the Early Childhood Education Program at the Surrey Community College, states, "The burning question that I have had since I began teaching college courses is what happened to learning the basics before college? What happened to the education of our children to create productive adults? And if the concept of critical thinking was taught to young children from the earliest possible teachable moment, what kind of college student would I see entering my classroom?" Well, obviously not people at Texas GOP, but you'll see more open-minded, intellectual, and students as opposed to thoughtless and minded. Critical thinking prepares students for not only college, but the real world as well. It allows students to be successful in situations where they need to be on their feet at all times, and in situations where they need to move quickly from one task to the other. It prepares individuals to think more clearly, which in turn will make them better individuals in society, and it will allow them to come into their own. According to the Miniature Guide of Critical Thinking, Richard Paul and the Elder, a well-cultivated critical thinker is, in short, self-directed, self-disciplined, self-monitored, and a self-cultivated thinker. It presupposes assent to rigorous standards of excellence and mindful command of their use. It entails effective communication, problem-solving abilities, and commitment to overcome our native egocentrism and sociocentrism. So these are the very qualities I believe everyone should possess in order to be successful, and by doing this, we need to implement critical thinking in public schools. Okay, so continuing on what my group is talking about, the Republican Party, which you guys know, have banned higher order thinking skills, and according to Washington Post, it opposes, among other things, early childhood education, sex education, and multicultural education. And TruthOut.org states that the Republican Party and their followers, and for them, the Republican Party and their followers, thinking is subversive, imagination is a sin, and the Republican Party have codified this into public policy. Additionally, they think that critical thinking is a direct challenge to the leaders, and as they have stated, that they say that it undermines authority and challenges students' fixed beliefs, which is complete crap. And John Harvey from Forbes states that, "Do you know which values and concepts are rejected in the absence of higher order thinking skills? Can you take a guess?" None, zero, nada, nothing is undermined, or no one's values or whatever fixed, or whatever students' fixed values aren't challenged or anything. And then he says that, therefore, depending on the time and place when we decide to stop challenging ideas and meekly accept what we are told, we might thereafter and forever be racist, sexist, communist, fascist, Democrats. He goes on, or and says nothing would be questioned were we to implement such policy, which has already been implemented in Texas. They say that higher order thinking skills can be unsettling on religious views, but it doesn't challenge or tell, it doesn't tell you, it tells you how to think, but it doesn't tell you what to think. The students are responsible for, critical thinking, it prepares you to think critically, and doesn't tell you what to think. And critical thinking is crucial in education. It has numerous benefits, as my opponents have stated. And the Texas Republican platform is terrifying. And John Harvey from Forbes also states that the Republicans 50 years ago were actually willing to discuss reason and compromise, and they actually respected logic and reason, and that they are solely missed. The Republicans, Republicans from 50 years ago, what they wanted are totally against everything now, and are banning everything that they were actually for 50 years ago. And lastly, don't take our word for it. Read the platform for yourself and see how much crap it's full of, and implement higher order thinking skills because it's crucial in education and it'll benefit youth.
Wow.